Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Global Logistics meeting. We are very happy to have you all on the call today. We are expecting to have people from across the globe entering into what will be a very interesting and informative discussion. I have the pleasure of knowing many of you, but I also see some new names as well. My name is Julie Curis, and I am the lead of the Community Development and Capacity Building team here at the Global Logistics Cluster. Today, we have a very full agenda. We have many interesting panels and great speakers that are coming to you. So without further ado, we'll do a little bit of an introduction on some of the technical aspects of the meeting, and then from there, we'll enter into the content. So I think many of you are already well aware that the topics that were covered at the regional meetings or in the in-country meetings were on logistics challenges and needs and how to address them, as well as collective advocacy and preparation activities. Today, we invite you all to be a part of that conversation, and we'll do a warm-up activity here to get everyone started. So the first thing, of course, is to enter your name and your organization and where you're joining into the chat box. I think many of you I can see have already done that, so the chat feature is obvious there. We will also be recording this meeting, including the comments in the chat. So for your own awareness, please keep that in mind. In addition, the session will also be translated into 3 additional languages. So all of the content will be delivered in English, and then it will be translated into French, Spanish, or Arabic. If you are interested in participating in one of those additional languages, please look for the interpretation icon that should be at the bottom of your Zoom bar. If you don't see it, obviously, click on the 3 dots that says More, and you'll find the feature there. From there, you can pick which language you would like to join in. Just as a reminder here, though, is that you need to be on a computer, so either on a desktop or a laptop in order to be able to use the translation feature. If you're using it on your, if you've entered this Zoom call on your phone or through the dial-in option, you will not see the opportunity to do translation. The translation will be taking place throughout the day, and so you can always switch between the two as you like. We did say that we would like to make this as engaging as possible. One of the challenges that when we're in an online forum with so many people is how can we hear the voices of so many? Throughout the day, we're going to be inviting people to put their questions into the chat, which we will be looking for and calling for when appropriate. We'll be inviting you to unmute your microphone and to speak. We will also be using polls where we can get a little bit of a pulse on what is the thoughts or impressions throughout the day. So just to make sure these features are working, I do want to do a quick test. And if everyone could please either raise their hand or send an emoji, that will show us that you know how to raise your hand or how to either give us a thumbs up or a smiley face. Let's see if we see anyone coming in. Some people are figuring it out. I see a thumbs up. I see some smiley faces. Godfrey has the hands up. Okay, excellent. So now everyone's familiar with that button. We'll also just kickstart with one simple poll as well. So you'll see popping up on your screen right now a poll that asks how many GLMs or global logistic meetings have you attended? This is my first one, 2 to 5, 6 to 10, or 10 plus. Already 40 people have voted. We'll give it one more minute. Excellent. There we have it. So now you have all had the opportunity to participate in your first poll, and we had over 60 people vote, and we can see that for many people, for 35% of the audience, this is your first GLM. So thank you very much for being here, and it's a pleasure to have you with us today. We also have many returning people to the GLM. We have 47% who have gone to 2 or 5 GLMs, 5% who've gone to 6 or 10, and then there's 12% of you who have been to more than 10 GLMs. And I know many of your faces and names well, so great to see you back. Let me see if I can share these results with you. I think not. Okay. Oh, you saw. Okay, excellent. So I will stop sharing there. Now we're warmed up. We'll go in a little bit into the agenda, and then I will hand over for our opening remarks. So the agenda was shared with you in advance already, so I don't think this will be a surprise at all. But just to say that today, in a few moments, I'm going to hand over to Maïlin, who will open with the opening remarks and the strategic updates from the Global Logistics Cluster. From there, I will hand over to Mary and to Blessing, who will go over the GLM highlights and a recap and overview. Following which, we will enter into the first of our 4 discussion panels. So throughout the day today, we will have 4 different panels where we will be discussing the content that was from the meetings that took place around the world. There was 10 different meetings that took place. Some of them were focused specifically on the country, others more on the region, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to each of them. So this morning, we will be going through 3 of the panels, covering the topics of Ethiopia, Kenya, South Sudan, followed by Southern Africa, Syria, and Thailand. Then we switch over to Western Africa, where we'll talk to Burkina Faso and Senegal. And then we leave some additional time for questions in case we haven't had the opportunity to reach all of them so far. Following that, I'm sure we will all need a slight break from the engaging content and from being on our Zoom. So we will take a 90-minute lunch break. When we return, we'll receive strategic updates from the logistics cluster team. Then we will have our colleagues over in the western part of the world join us, because at that point it will be a more pleasant hour for them, and we'll have insights from Panama and Venezuela before handing over to our final conclusions and next steps for where we go from here. So quite simple and straightforward. And I think that leads us perfectly to our opening remarks. So Maïlin, sitting over here beside me, I hand over to you for our opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Julie. And thank you very much all for being online. And I think that's the first thing that I would like to say. A huge thank you. We had over 450 people involved in this process over a month of discussions, consultations, exchanges, and that's considerable. And I really would like to acknowledge this. Colleagues in 10 locations physically, but also online, have contributed to those discussions. And I'd like to remind perhaps something that sounds like it is the basis, but the GLM is the meeting of the partners, is the meeting of the community. And so that's what it's all about. It's about all the partners being able to exchange, discuss, raise their priorities, and seeing how together and collectively we can help each other achieve what we have to achieve and reach the people that we need to reach. So a huge thank you first and foremost to all of you. A big thanks also to the team here for organizing and ensuring, and sorry, I'm saying here, but here and in the various countries and regions for organizing those conversations, enabling those exchanges. So this is the starting point of our journey about three years ago now, when we looked at, are we doing the right thing, and are we doing it right? And it was all about how do we ensure that the community of partners that we are can strive and achieve what it has to achieve. The challenges that we're facing are going at a pace that is much higher than our ability to be able to solve them. We still have half of the population that we need to assist that is located in 10 countries around the world, very concentrated. 80% of them are in protracted crisis. Yes, this year we've seen it again. We have new large, complex emergencies that are arising with new challenges. But we also see that the pace at which we have to respond to the impact of climate change in many of the countries around the world is accelerating. There are more people displaced in the world than ever before, and all of this requires so much from all of us, and we need to continue to work together. So the cluster approach was born out of the necessity to coordinate, as Mary used to say, to bring order to the chaos, no? And enhance that collaboration, inform the humanitarians to ensure that we make the right decisions, that we avoid the duplications, that we share or optimize our efforts. When we met in Geneva about a year ago, one of the remarks that was made is that if the cluster approach was created and developed about 20 years ago, and we'll come back on the 20 years, so nearly 20 years ago, it was really because of that multiplication of partners, be it from the humanitarian sector, be it from the private sector, being from the national governments, obviously responding, being from the regional organization, being from the bilateral assistance. And this was creating so much chaos that we needed to make sure that we're coming together as one, at least to have those conversations. And 20 years later, this is happening. And I mentioned this before, but when Gaza happened, seeing that at the first cluster meeting, over 250, 300 people joined up on the first call to get together, to exchange, to understand who's doing what, how they can be of help, who can bring which added value. That is, to me, very much demonstrating the success, at least in the logistics sector, that we have had over time. What we were created to achieve 20 years ago has happened. Now, can we do better? Do we need to do more? Definitely. We need to continue to assess the gaps together, to map out what are our common bottlenecks, our common constraints. We need to work together to develop those agile, different, collaborative response plans in many of the emergencies that we face. More than ever, and we'll come back also to that, we need to advocate for the areas that are critical for us to be able to respond. One of them being access. We need to mobilize the resources that are needed for all of us. And in the current environment, we all know that the resources are shrinking, yet the needs are rising. So that's another challenge that we need to continue working on. And where we all have the same constraints and gaps, we need to continue to augment our capacity to be able to respond. While we do this on the ground for the emergency response, we should not forget and continue to strengthen our effort in preparedness. The work that we all have been doing with national governments, national community, local communities, regional entities, and humanitarian partners and the private sector has been critical, but it's not enough. Yes, it goes with the level of resources and the flexibility and the predictability of the resources that we gain over the years, but this is really an area that we need to continue to invest in. We will come back a bit later with Mary and with the updates from some of the colleagues on the most recent conversations around preparedness, but I think that, and including the regional approach that we're also trying to enhance, but I think that this is really a critical point. A second one that I wanted to raise is around environmental sustainability. No, it is not a buzzword. It is no longer a buzzword. It needs to happen. We need to embed that in what we're doing. Many of us have started. The constraints are huge because it does represent a lot more work, a lot more resources, but this is no longer a luxury. This needs to happen. So again, we'll come back to that. And I think this was also pointed in many of the conversations that you've had on ground. Now, again, the way we are collaborating as a community is all about trust, respect, transparency, open communication, making sure that we are on an equal foot together, working towards the same goal, but also that we are very much looking at the results that we want to achieve. For that, we need to continue on our path of engagement. And I'm repeating this because this was, to get back to it, one of the key starting points. We are a community of partners, but that includes that involves that we have obligations, responsibilities, and duties, and accountability to do this together. Whether we network, whether we coordinate, whether we cooperate, we need to make sure that everyone contributes. And as we do so, we also need to be very cautious to make the best use of our complementarity, the value that we all have to bring, and that we do not compete with each other. We are all in this together. So we need to continue striving for actionable results in everything that we do. And that goes with the change and the systemic change that we need to bring to our work. I guess, Mary, you may come to that also with the piece on preparedness, but there is a piece on evaluating and monitoring and ensuring the accountability of what we do and the impact of what we do. So that is one of the key priorities that we also set for ourselves. We need to continue to enhance those ways of working together, to listen, to adjust, to adapt, to redefine when we need to redefine, learn from the good and the bad, be able to transition from one situation to another, and to transition out of countries as we are continuing to support the governments and the national partners in ensuring that their coordination mechanisms are in place. We need to continue to enhance and work with the private sector at local, regional, and global level, because the private sector needs to be resilient to shocks and needs to continue to operate. Again, I've said it and I will say it again. If the private sector is working, if the markets are functioning, we as a community are able, as a logistics community, are able to do our work. If and when the resources are exhausted and the markets are not able to function, then we will have to intervene. We need unimpeded access to all the places where we intervene. And on this point, I'd like to pause for a second, because we've heard it over the past 12 months, especially in the crisis that we're going through in the Middle East. Gaza, Palestine is not a logistics crisis. It is an access crisis. And we should not mix the two. The issues that we're facing are related to the impact of the lack of access. And this is critical. And that's why our role in advocacy altogether is extremely important. And I would like to thank and point out the contribution of the partners, of the academia, of the donors throughout the multiple strategic conversations to raise awareness and advocate for that access for the logisticians to be able to do their work. We'll probably touch base also on the strategic conversations happening with ECHO, led by ECHO, later this year and throughout next year, to continue to pass on that message, the various events that are going to take place where we need to continue to advocate for unimpeded access and principled response. I spoke about adaptation. I'd like also to speak to innovation, to community solutions, to community of practice. We have together done quite a bit over the past year and a half. I'd like to thank the entire cluster team for their efforts on this. The app, the cluster, the logistics cluster app is out on the App Store and Android Store since yesterday night. This is going to revolutionize the way we work together. We will have more access, more ability to exchange. You will have more ability to share your information. And this is in complement of all the efforts that have been done on LogAI over the past 4 or 5 years. Really something that for us is going to bring a lot more of easiness and ability to be able to exchange. Let me not forget the work that is being done by all our colleagues in the capacity building. You have discussed in the countries, and we have discussed over the past few months, some of the challenges that the organizations are facing in terms of having the required resources that are trained and equipped to do their job in countries. I'd like to flag and give a little nudge to the parcel project, because we have debated over time around where is our role here as a logistics cluster. Is it to train, or is it to ensure that there is a platform where all the training and all the resources from the entire community is available to all, for all to be able to use it? And that's the latter. So big thanks to many of the organizations that have already shared some of these resources, and we will continue to be the platform and to have the platform for you all to be able to use. I spoke to environmental sustainability. Similarly, a lot has been done, and a big thanks to the entire coalition of the REC and all the partners that have supported this initiative. A lot has been shared and a lot has been made available. Some progress has been made. We are seeing now, and we're learning from the feedback that we're receiving. We need to structure that a bit better. We need to make sure that the access to that information is easier for all the colleagues and all the partners on ground. Again, the aim of the REC was to ensure that it is meant for the practitioners on the ground. But I guess we've been a bit of a victim of our success, right? With the amount of information that has been received in that regard. And so one of the next steps that we will do is to review and revamp a bit our platform to make sure that there is more, the access is easier, and that the partners can find what they're looking for from each one of you that has shared their progress, from the calculators to the best practices to the case studies. Raising resources is also something that we need to continue doing together. It goes with the advocacy, but not only. And when I say raising resources, I should have said ensuring that all of us reach, share, and optimize the resources that we are getting. The main purpose of the logistics cluster is to fill gaps, and that's one thing. But there is also the necessity to also use our resources more efficiently. And here comes more sharing of resources, mutualisation, for lack of English translation, mutualization, I guess. And all the efforts that are being done from many partners to make sure that all of us have access and are able to make the best use of the resources that we're getting. The 20 years that I wanted to mention also. So yes, next year it will be the 20th anniversary of the cluster approach, including the logistics cluster. And as I mentioned in opening, I think that we can confidently say that we have achieved the goal for which we were established. But again, the goals of 20 years ago have also evolved, and we need to evolve with it. So a huge thanks to all of us, to all of you, to the entire teams working in the countries. We will see throughout the day that the topics that you have discussed, ranging from advocacy to working with the private sector to preparedness, are critical to the work that we do, and that there's still a lot more that we can do together to enhance our response. With this, I just really want to ensure that we acknowledge the importance and the value of these hybrid meetings, and the possibility that we now have, and hopefully we can continue to improve, to hear from all of you in the field, to make those conversations come back to the global level so that we can take the necessary actions and then bring them back down to the field for you to be able to continue the efforts that you're doing much better. I hope I have covered the main points, and I will leave it to Mary and Blessing to go more in details on some of the conversations that you've had and the process that you've had over the past months and what we will be discussing today. Thank you very much.